Hey guys, my name's Samir. Welcome to Wisdom with Him. This is my first episode of this podcast, and this podcast has been a long time coming for me, namely because I like to talk and I like to connect with people and have open conversations around consciousness, around the mind, around life, and really dialoguing about what this human experience is. And yet, like most of us, we get in our own way. And for me, almost a hyper self-consciousness had me overthinking myself from even acting in the direction of something that I've been wanting to do for so long. So now I'm turning on this podcast, turned on record, and I'm like, let's go. I'm really excited to dive deep with you guys here now and really open up this conversation. It's been something that's been near and dear to my heart. And I'm looking forward to showing up here with you guys and connecting time after time. So I really wanted to open up this experience with you guys around what does it look like when we stay trapped inside our mind. And this is one of the central themes that this show will unfold with you guys, really understanding the mechanism of the mind. Because the mind itself has certain fundamental ways of operating. And when you understand that, then you don't seem to get whipped by its assaults as strongly as when you're not aware of those fundamental operations. And so, as I begin this conversation with you guys, we're going to start with something that everybody here is probably very familiar with, and it's our comfort zone. The comfort zone is a result of our mind's innate want to protect us from potential pain, hurt, harm, rejection, judgment, abandonment, disappointment, right? And so what happens is, as we're developing and growing, we have experiences. When we're born as a child, we're limitless in our perspective and our observation of life. And then as we connect first and foremostly with our mother and our father, these are the fundamental expressions and experiences we have that create our understanding of he and she in the world. Every other male and female that we relate ourselves to moving forward in our life always is in reference to our initial experiences with our mother and our father. And whether you had a present mother or a present father or a non-present mother or a non-present father, these still fundamentally create the subconscious imprints on what it means to experience a masculine and feminine in your world as you move forward. And this unfolds in the way that you dialogue with authority figures, with relationships, and ultimately with life and your own self. And so this in and of itself is foundational to understanding how you show up in the world. Do you show up with a sense of innate distrust in other people? Do you have a fundamental fear that things won't work out for you? Do you feel like you can trust the opposite sex? All of this is connected to our early conditioning and how we experienced our relationship with our mother and our father. And so as that unfolds, as a child, we naturally come from a space of trust, unconditional love. When you're in the womb for 9 months, you're not thinking about how am I going to grow my fingers? How am I going to come out of this space? You're in complete trust. There is a famous quote by the late great Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of my old teachers and role models, and he said, ego is etching God out. For the first 9 months, we are in complete trust and surrender to this God force, life, the interconnected consciousness that brings everything together. And then, as we're born, we start to experience the world outside. And as time progresses, as our experience unfolds, we begin to say, I think I got it here, God. I'll take it from here. And so eventually the ego develops, and this understanding of ourselves as being separate from the whole, as something that exists within but apart from everything in creation. And that isn't fundamentally how it is. And so this podcast is really centered around breaking the barriers that you probably have towards understanding this higher power, this universal force, this consciousness of life, this understanding of what God is. And that's why the title of this podcast is Wisdom with Him. In Hawaii, they have a saying that goes, "He is greater than I." And what that's referring to is He being that which is bigger than our little egoic self. And in India, they have a same concept or understanding that there's the little I, and that's our egoic, self-centered identity that thinks it's a little thing that has to get through life and figure it all out and protect itself and make sure it's taken care of. And then there's the big I, the capital I. And this is I as consciousness, I as our true self, our pure self, our real self. And this conversation, as we're going to unfold, is really centered around understanding the nature of who we are. Who are we when we actually undo the childhood conditioning that formulated our ego construct, that formulated our ways and behaviors in life that were adaptive in terms of showing up in certain ways because that was what was safe or got attention or approval. And as we learn to undo that and undo those layers and reveal to ourselves that we were actually none of those things, all of those layers came upon us afterwards. They were superimposed. But what was original was something that was fundamental, what was original, which could never actually be taken from you. And so this is what this conversation is really centered on. And it's something that has been extremely passionate within me as a journey that I've been on personally. And it's something I've studied academically during my education career. And it's something that I'm now doing directly one-on-one with my clients in the work I'm doing now as a coach. And it's around understanding the nature of who we are and truly being able to have you, as someone who's listening right now, be able to understand deeper from a place of direct observation and direct experience the truth of who you are. There's something in India that describes the difference between the real and the unreal. And this is fundamental, and it comes out of ancient texts called the Upanishads. This is a philosophy on oneness or truth. India is steeped in mystical knowledge, self-awareness, and really focuses on the ultimate experience that a human can have. And a lot of the teachings and the wisdom that comes out of the East is centered around understanding the truth of who we are beneath our ego construct. Because the ego ultimately is a product of social conditioning, familial conditioning, trauma, pain, fear, attachment. But it isn't the essence of who we actually are. The essence of who we are comes fundamentally from something that is inborn, innate, and undeniable. And so take a moment right now as you're listening and just close your eyes with me. And as you close your eyes, I just want you to take a moment and completely sense how you know that you're alive here and now in this moment. And as you sense your own aliveness, notice how it's kind of indescribable. You know that you're alive right now, but do you know how you know? Or is it something you're just aware of? This is so important to the rest of this conversation. Our knowing is something that's fundamental. It's grounded in something that is so substantially clear, it's undoubtable. And yet, it's intangible. I talk with my clients about there's 3 layers. We have knowing, and then above that we have feeling, and above that we have thinking. And most of us spend majority of our time consumed in the realm of thinking. And we're trying to navigate our lives and our experiences from organizing our thinking. And there's a lot in the self-development world around positive mindset, shifting your mindset. If you can just adopt a new set of belief patterns, everything can change. I like to go a little bit deeper. For me, the way I've journeyed in this experience called life, it's been always centered around having a direct experience myself, not just receiving information, theory, and knowledge and storing it, because ultimately that's me trusting some hearsay. I wanted direct experience always. This is what prompted me on my journey inwards from the very beginning. And so again, what my intention is here in setting the stage of what will be many conversations with you guys is I want you to continuously confirm what I dialogue with you about and reference it directly to your own experience. This is where you get real knowledge. Knowledge that is not gained from something outside, but it's something that's innately seen from within. It's an insight. And insights are so much more profound and anchoring in your experience, because when you discover something on your own, no one can take that away from you. When someone tells you something, they can challenge it. You could have new information come in and contrary what you've just learned. But when you have a self-discovery, when you realize something from within, this is wisdom. This is something that stays with you throughout your life experience. It isn't forgotten after you've passed a test or gotten your degree or finished that project. This is something that fundamentally changes your perspective. And this entire conversation revolves around you. So I really want you to be engaged in these conversations, looking from within about your own experience. So often nowadays we're overwhelmed with external world events, experiences, the things that are important to us on the outside, friends, family, our job, where we're going in this world. And so we give little time to actually navigating our inner world and understanding what the inner terrain actually looks like. So we get by with coping mechanisms. We get by with dependencies. We get by with substances. We get by with relationships that don't always feed our deepest selves, but they provide us some sense of a stability or a crutch that allows us to just ignore the deeper pangs that we're all experiencing. I think in the last 2 years, the world has gone through an unforeseeable change with the result of the world events that have unfolded. And with that has given a lot of people time to introspect. You had a choice. Do you watch the world through the lens of fear? Or do you start to realize that the world isn't in as much control as we all thought when we have to deal with an unforeseen chaos? And so a lot of people have begun to ask themselves questions that change the way they show up in the world. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the reason for this whole thing we call life? Why am I working a 9-to-5 job when at the end of it, that could all end? And what really matters is time with my family. Me telling the people that I may never see again, I love you. Me being the truest version of myself that I knew was within me as a little kid. So what's stopping you from answering these questions? What's stopping you from diving into these questions? Perhaps you've been on a journey, one that's been a result of past trauma and pain that has led you down a path of self-healing, learning from different teachers, alternative medicine, and new ways of being on the planet. Everything that I want to give you in these conversations comes from the deepest part of my heart that loves you all as my own self. I always wondered how interesting. There is no manual to this thing called human experience. And so I wondered if I studied and learned and, looked to people in the past that lived good lives, full lives, successful lives, fulfilled lives, could I put together the puzzle, put together the understanding, the map towards living the optimal human experience? What I discovered in my journey is what I'm going to continue to share with you guys. And it's that understanding who you are is a living, daily, moment to moment question that requires your attention. And when you start to navigate and start to become more aware of where you place your attention, your life fundamentally begins to change. And as you begin to shift your attention inside more and more, you start to gain inner space. As you start to navigate through your past in relation to this present moment awareness of who you are, you'll start to be able to begin the process of letting go of everything that you've been holding on to that in this now moment is no longer serving you. And so as I invite you to join me as we continue these conversations, I'm asking you to be open. I'm asking you to be willing. I'm asking you to confirm for yourself what I share. And I want you to stay in the conversation. I don't want you to just think this is a conversation for somebody else and I'm hearing this on my drive or on my walk or in my room right now and this doesn't apply to me. This applies to somebody else who's been on a different path, or this applies to somebody else with more education than I or from a different part of the world. No. This conversation is directly and intimately about you and yourself. And it's about you honoring and recognizing who you are so you can more actively participate in your own dialogue with life. You're going to hear me use that word a lot, dialogue with life. And it's something that I experienced when I experienced my school time and my journey in Hawaii for 2 years. And I started to realize that as you show up and you begin to become more honest with yourself, more authentic, all of a sudden life is always responding to you. And I started to take notice of the present moment more and more. And I realized, much like our news feed on Instagram or social media, you could be scrolling and seeing what is the refresh and let's see the newest update. What's the newest post? Life, from the moment you open your eyes until the moment you close your eyes, is a living news feed speaking only to you. Every conversation you have is for you. Every glimpse you have of a sign, of a news feed, of a post, of a license plate, of a synchronistic number, everything in your day-to-day experience is speaking to you. And what I want you to step into is understanding that the entirety of that matrix of experience, we can call it life, is speaking to you. And it's intimately connected to you and your internal dialogue with life, and then how you show up in life and experience it physically. And so that's why it is so important to have this conversation, to begin to unveil and understand the truth of who you are beneath the ego, so that you can actually tune in and listen and perceive the signs that life is giving you, guiding you forward in this unknown. The future is unknown for us all. And some people will resist that and try to latch on to things that they can control as a safety. And then there's another way of living, and it's in faith. It doesn't have to be faith in a particular deified entity. But I like to look at it as faith in the interconnectedness of this entire experience we call life. And it all starts with you. And so I'm really excited for us to continue this conversation. And I'm really grateful for your time, your attention, and your energy here, because that matters. And I hope that what these conversations begin to provide you is a space inside you to begin to listen and to trust who you are, and to trust that deep, fundamental knowing you carry that has been with you prior to everything you've been experiencing and picked up along the way, and begin to lead your life from there. Because life becomes so fun when you do. There's a magic to existence. And when you realize that magic starts with you, everything changes. So I'm going to wrap it up here for the first episode. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Samir, and I'm looking forward to diving deep with you again soon. Till then, be well, stay safe, and I love you.